Okay, we're going to go through some stretching and foam rolling. This is great for runners and triathletes, cross-country skiers, general endurance sports cyclists. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through some of the gadgets and tools that we're going to have available to us to do this stretching and foam rolling. So we've got two tennis balls, and these are taped together with typical athletic tape. I've got a lacrosse ball or just a hard foam ball. It's about the size of a small orange, maybe a Major League Baseball. That actually would work the same. We've got one of these Spry stretching straps. It's got a loop here, a loop in the middle, and another loop, and we'll cover that. It's about a $5 or $6 item. We've got the size of a 16-inch softball, a foam ball. We've got the Vibrating Peanut, which is also sold on Amazon. It's about 60 bucks. It's got 4 speeds, and it's going to help us with trigger point myofascial release. We've got what they call the slant, which we use for some of the calf and dorsiflexion stuff. And then we also have kind of a stick, and this one's got little nubbies on it. And then the last one is the foam roll. This one's about 6 inches in diameter, and it's about 12 inches long. We also have, your typical 36-inch one. This one is got PVC in the middle, so it's a little more durable. Actually comes with the cover. That's in the laundry right now, and we disinfect them here at the studio. So those are the tools that we'll be using. And we're going to kind of go through a little bit of a protocol. And so we're going to start by rolling our quads. I'm going to try to make sure that I can always see what you guys are looking at and make sure that we're getting good videos. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to get down on the floor. And the goal is to roll the main part of our quadricep from just above the knee all the way up to the hip. In general, we're going to try to move the blood towards the heart as we do this. And so we don't want to be way out on the outside where we've got the IT band, iliac, tibia, IT band, right? And that gets a little bit too far out to the side. There's a bone there. There's not a lot of soft tissue. You can start to bruise and even get bursa sacs or built up. So we want to stay on the main part of the muscle in the middle. We're going to go ahead and get onto our forearms. We can do one leg at a time and work in a plank and just roll back and forth like this. Or we can get on both legs and just gently follow it all the way towards the hip. Now when we get on a knot, we can sit there and just slowly edge up. It's best to do this right after you've warmed up and there's good blood flow. After a workout is a fantastic time to do it. You can do it lightly before to kind of get a little activation, but it's best practice to do it after, when your body's nice and warm. You can spend about half the time that way, and you get nice releases, and you get more out of your stretching after this. So I'd foam roll and then stretch. So that's a good quad stretch. The next one is what we call the Sartorius. It's basically a muscle that starts here, attaches, comes up and across. It's one of the quadricep muscles, kind of helps with lateral stability, tends to be pretty sore and locked down, especially when the quad gets fatigued. And so when we're landing, start to rotate out, use this a little bit more, maybe in cycling. We turn our knees out so we can take this foam roller. Let me make sure that we get down, and we're going to turn our leg out at 90 degrees, and we're going to take this perpendicular, and then we're just going to start by the knee and roll up towards the groin. And we do that nice and slow. A lot of times this starts out being very, very sore. When the soreness goes away, you'll find that you have less, if not no, knee pain. A lot of times the knee pain is caused by those muscles being shortened, and as they cross the joints, they start to rub, cause a little inflammation. And so doing some good foam rolling can be very helpful. So we would do both legs like this. Try to give you a slightly different view on this side. Do the same exact thing, getting down here. Turn this knee out so it's perpendicular to the leg, and I'm rolling up into the groin. If you do this right, you can get into the adductor group, get a nice release up in there as well. So after we've done the quadricep and the inner thigh or sartorius, we can technically use the stick, do the same thing, roll back and forth, roll this inner thigh. If you don't have the foam roller, you're traveling, or it's just too painful to put all your body weight on it. Next one we will do is we take this pad. You can take a throw pillow from the couch just to give you something underneath your knee. You're going to drive your hips forward. We don't want a big arch in the lower back. We just want to be upright. We're going to drive forward, and then we're going to raise our hand and get a nice stretch up the front of the leg, working on the hip flexors, the psoas and iliacus and iliac psoas. And we're just doing a nice stretch, and then if we want, we can do a little bit of a lean over to the side to get a little bit more of that stretch. And we want to breathe into it and hold it. Feel that stretch. Let it hold and release. We're breathing. Feel free at any time to pause this video. When you feel something that's working, you can stay in it longer. You can do a couple more reps. I'm going to try to move through probably a little bit faster in some ways than if I were doing this on my own. But there's a lot of explanation, so you may find that you're able to hold these stretches longer too while I'm talking. So now I'm just going to the other side, and I'll do this one so you can kind of see me. I'm coming at you. Hips are nice and square. Tuck in the clothes so that you can kind of see the hip lines here. And we're going to drive this arm up. And then once we get up in there, we can do that little bit reaching over to the side. It opens up the whole side outside of that IT band, a little bit of the main quad. You can come back out, let it relax for a second, take a couple deep breaths, and rotate back into it. Okay, so those are that's the quad roll, sartorius. We got a little bit of the kneeling psoas. Next, I'm going to do a quad stretch. So for the quad stretch, we'll try to get this pointed a little bit more towards, try to make it so that you can see it. Go ahead and grab onto something here. I'll move you back a little bit further. Should be able to get a pretty good view. Okay, so I'm going to grab onto something that I can hold on to. It's not about balance on this. I'm going to try to keep my knees together. I'm going to grab my ankle and not my toes. I'm going to push my hips forward, and I'm going to pull my shoulders back. And I'm looking to get a good quad stretch. Now I can do both legs, or both arms. So I can do the right arm with the right leg, or I can reach across, and that's going to change that angle just a little bit. If I let that knee rotate out, I'll get a little bit more of the inner thigh, but I'm going to sit in here like this. If I come at you, I'll grab a dowel rod to kind of show you. Again, I'm keeping my knees together, pushing my hips forward, pulling my shoulders back, and just holding that good stretch. And I'm breathing into it. Now I can do the same thing on the other side. Grab the ankle, put the knees together, pull the shoulders back. A lot of mistakes I used to see when I was strength coach at the university was that the knees would go out like this. Football players and stuff back in the day thought that they were getting a good stretch. Want to keep that knee together, push the hips forward, and you'll feel it run right up the front of the thigh. Pull the shoulders back. Really good stretch there. Good. Now we covered the IT band. It's a fantastic IT band stretch. You're standing on both legs. You can cross one leg over and you can kind of lean down. That will stretch the outside of the back leg. You can also do a little bit of a reach to the side. A lot of times if it's fairly flexible, you won't feel much, but when it's not flexible, when it is locked down, these are fantastic. So the same thing on the other side, you'd cross over and we can fold more of a hip hinge, right? Hinging at the hips and just relaxing and breathing. And that will be that back leg that gets that stretch. So now we've covered the quadricep stretch after the psoas. So we worked the upper thigh and then we did the full quadricep. We did a little bit of IT band. Let's get into the glutes. So the glutes for piriformis. There's a couple different ways we can attack this. So if we want to be pretty passive, if we've got fairly tight glutes, there's a seated piriformis stretch. So we would take this leg and cross it over, and then we're going to kind of lean into it. We'll get a little bit of a piriformis or glute stretch. The other way is to take this and hug it up and across towards my left shoulder. I'll feel a really good stretch. This is an excellent stretch. And that gets a really, really nice full stretch on that piriformis and glute complex. We do the same thing. I'll give you two different angles. This one's a little tighter on me, so I can kind of do the external rotation a little bit. Sit up there really with good posture, no slouching. Feel that stretch that joint a little bit, and then I can reach up and across. I'll turn, and I'm pulling across to my right shoulder with my left knee, and both arms are kind of hugged. Get a good stretch. Now, if they're tight like that when you go into it, one thing that we can do is we can take one of these foam rollers, and we can go ahead and we'll do the left side because that was the one that was a little tight. Go ahead and sit on the foam roller. We cross that ankle over. I've got all my weight on that left side, and I'm rolling back and forth over that tight, sore spot. When I get up on it, I can pull it up and across. If I'm not quite getting it, or it's not, it's there, you know it's fairly tight, but the foam roller doesn't seem to be really hitting the spot, we've got the ability to take one of these balls. We also have a larger ball. So you got to kind of pick your tool and decide which one does the best for you. Different times you may need different ones. So I sit up here, and this one's going to get right into that tight spot a little bit more. You want to hold these 10, 20 seconds, 45 seconds, probably the most. Anything after that, it's probably too much. Another way to do it, rather than rolling, is to take the Vibrating Peanut. It oscillates. I can literally sit on it, sit right on that spot, and the vibration will reverberate up into those tight muscles, and it carries it more towards the bone at the attachment, and it tends to let it release a little bit more, a little bit quicker. Now, you may not be able to put all your body weight on that Vibrating Peanut. We use that more for the quad and the calf, but it is an excellent trick. So another one of those tools. So another one we've got for the Piriformis. Make sure you get a good view here. Is Pigeon on the table. So we're going to take this at about 90 degrees. We let this leg hang over, and then we're going to fold forward and just feel that stretch. Sometimes you'll feel that the glute is actually doing pretty good, but it's that tight adductor group or Sartorius. Then you rewind a little bit, go back to the foam roller, try to roll that inner thigh a little bit. You can also grab the Vibrating Peanut, and you can let it vibrate on those tighter muscles. Get a little bit of a release. Shut that back off. Get back in. Believe it or not, just that little bit gives me more relief, and I can get deeper into the stretch. I want to take some deep breaths and breathe into it. Hold it. This is a modified Pigeon, so if you've done yoga and you get on the floor, sometimes you got to put a bolster under it. Table's an excellent place. There's not a lot of pressure on your knee. And then let me make sure that we've still got. We can also come in from the other side and do the same thing. Now we can rotate out. We don't want to do that. We want to get our hips nice and square. That's the key to that Pigeon. And then folding forward into it. So let's see if I can't give you sitting here like this. Chest is up. I fold forward, breathing into it, getting a really good stretch. Pay attention to the difference between the right and the left side. One side's a little tighter. Kind of use some of these methods that I've described to help release them. Next part of the equation is worrying about hamstrings. So many times what we do is we forget the fact that quadricep, hamstrings, your antagonist underneath, it can get pretty tight. You've got your Hamstring is basically your bicep femoris, same as your bicep brachial. There's two heads attached across two joints. So when we're doing a hamstring release with a lacrosse ball or a similar ball, what we're going to do is go ahead and roll it back and forth until you find a knot. Once you find a knot, you go just a little bit more distal, a little bit further away from where the pain is, and then you're just going to move it back and forth. And it's going to kind of roll over the knot and help it release or break down that fascia. So if I take that with this one, I'll get it so that you guys can see me from both angles. I would take this, put it under here, roll back and forth until I find a spot. And once I do, I would go ahead, bend, and straighten that leg. Now, if you've got a really stubborn spot and you're afraid you're bruising it, that is exactly when we grab the Vibrating Peanut. Same thing, go ahead and set it on a pretty good pace, put it up underneath there, get up on that knot, and you can just sit there. Now realize that if your hamstring's shortened and tight, it could be putting some pressure on that knee, and as that the femur sits on top of the tibia, you got a little bit of a shearing or a little bit of a negative pressure that's kind of pulling on that knee. So sitting in here and releasing that hamstring can make a big difference. Now, anytime we release stuff, there can be a little bit of instability, especially if it's been tightened and locked down for a long time and you haven't been accessing its fullest strength. So that's when then we set ourselves up into good technique and good form, and we slowly increase the strength in the weight room. So it's real important that you put strength on top of function, not strength on top of something that's already dysfunctional or lacking its fullest range of motion. So that's how we work the hamstring. Once again, on the left, I would go ahead and put it on here. I roll until I find maybe a knot, and then I bend and straighten, and it looks like if I move it here, a lot of times you'll get a little grimace on your face. We know exactly when you're hitting one of those knots. So that's how we hit the hamstrings. Lacrosse ball, one of these. Once that's released, we can do a hamstring stretch. There's a couple different ways to do it. We've got the straight leg seated, where we lift our toe up, keep our pelvis square, pivot at our waist, and lean into it. We can take this and put it around, strap around the toes a little bit. It's going to pull a little bit on the gastroc, and we can lean into it and get a good stretch, and then we can relax. Lean into it a little bit and relax. And we want to hold it for 15-20 seconds. Those first couple seconds, you kind of cringe and resist it, and then you can go a little bit further. Again, anytime the tissue's warmed up, you're in a warm environment, it's going to be a little bit easier to access with blood flow, more and more flexibility. So after exercise, 10-15 minutes of this makes a big difference. So then we kind of lean into it and stretch, come back out. So feel free to fast forward this video, take the pieces that make the most sense. Maybe once a week, twice a week, you run through all of the stretches. I'm trying to put together a complete plan for people, and then I will post little vignettes like I've done with the strength training as well. Another way to get the hamstring We'll use again this table. Let me see if I can't get a pretty good angle here. We would go ahead, place this around the foot, and then I lay back and lift that foot up in the air. Keep the other one all the way down. To get the hamstring is to find a doorway, and you go ahead and put that foot all the way up, and the other leg is straight, and you just lay there and you work that leg closer and closer to the wall. So you can go right through the door jamb, put the leg up on the wall, and maybe you start back here further away. And then as you keep this leg down and straight, you can slowly move yourself closer and closer until you can get that entire leg up on the wall, and you just sit there and relax. And when you've got the ability to drop that hip all the way down and the other one through, that's going to be good hamstring flexibility at a good 90 degrees. We lay here for about 90 seconds, and then we switch legs. And we do the same thing on the other side, where we walk through and we try to make sure that both legs have that same hamstring flexibility. Okay, so next we are going to cover the calf stretch, or I should say calf roll. So you got a couple of different tools here. We've got Vibrating Peanut, we've got the Lacrosse Ball, we've got the foam roller. Basically what you're going to do is go ahead and put the foam roller on it, cross your feet over. Tend to have a spot right here on the gastroc, just below the knee, that tends to get lit up, especially if you're a heel strike. Roll out on your toes. And then the other spot is the soleus right here in the ball of it. It can also be a lot of hill running, sprinting, where your knee's slightly bent and you're driving off of that, pushing off with your toes a little extra hard. So those are the two main hot spots, but anything in that calf can be hot or sore, a little knotty. So we kind of go back and forth. If we find a spot, okay, that one might be it. And then what I do is I sit myself down, put a little more pressure over it, and then with this front or the bottom leg, we make circles with the calf. And we do counterclockwise and clockwise to kind of break it down. Now, if that's really painful and I'm not quite getting to it, and it feels like we're really going to do some damage, then we go ahead and take the Vibrating Peanut, go ahead and put that on that same spot. We don't necessarily need to put a lot of pressure on it. We can just gently sit there, and we're going to let the vibration do the job. And the muscle is going to fight against it, and then pretty quickly it starts to release. Now, if it's a really stubborn muscle, you may have to do this a number of times. You don't need to get OCD and do it forever. We're just talking maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Try to loosen up that tissue, get a little bit more out of it. You can also use that a little bit more down towards the Achilles, and you just roll them back and forth with that Vibrating Peanut. You can do the same thing with the foam roller. You can do the same thing with the stick. You've got to take the tension out of the muscle, so it's got to be, supple. We don't want it flexed. You're going to get no benefit. So I can kind of roll it like this. Nice thing about this is it can kind of get in between the muscles a little bit. You can also take the lacrosse ball or the two tennis balls, same thing. Two tennis balls may be able to get on both sides of that muscle. And then obviously the lacrosse ball, we get on that spot. And if it's really stringy, it feels like a real tight little rope, Sometimes it's like the diameter of, sometimes it's the diameter of 2 fingers, and then slowly it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That's what we're trying to work out. And just kind of working on that until we can kind of massage it out, knead it out, so to speak. Once we've gotten those, we'll go into the calf stretch. So we would do that on both legs, and we can use the wedge or slant. And what we're going to do is we basically pick a spot. Let's use the hallway here. And I can put my hands up on the wall. I can stand up nice and straight. We've got a couple different ways. We can put our hands up here, put one foot on it and one foot in front, keeping the back leg straight and this knee slightly bent to get close to it. Another way we can do it to test what our ankle flexibility is, we run our toe up to the wall and we see if we can keep our heel on the ground and touch the wall. Once we can, we move it a ½ inch off, do the same thing. Move it a little further, and this gets really good flexibility in the Achilles, great for classic skiing, for cross-country skiers. Having at least the ability to get your knee slightly in front of your toe helps trail runners that are running up a lot of steep hills. More road runners, if you can at least get your toe in line with your, or knee in line with your toe, that's a key. So the slant just gives you a little bit deeper stretch. Once again, come in here, square shoulders, feeling that stretch lined up. Now, there's a thing called the triplanar calf stretch. So we would actually, if I'm facing you, and I've got my hands against the wall, this is the straight on plane. Then what I can do is I can step out to the side, square my hips, push. Now I should be able to get a stretch on the outside of that calf. I can also step across, putting my hands on the wall, reaching across, and I'll get a little bit more of the medial aspect of the calf. So 3 different planes. So if I were to do that here, it would look something like this. I put my hand up against the wall, I'm dead center, should feel it centered on my calf. If I want to feel it on the medial aspect, I reach outside the body, try and keep the hips square, keeping the heel flat on there, and I feel it on the outside. Then I can slide it over, and I can do the same thing on this side, reaching off to the side. One other way that we do it is we can drive our knee up, and every time we drive our knee up towards the wall, we're going to feel a little bit of this stretch in the main part of the calf. We can reach up and across to the side. Every time I swing my weight, I get a little bit of the medial, and I can reach out to the side, or I can step out to the side, and then I'll get more of the lateral aspect of that calf. So there's a couple different ways of doing it. We just want healthy, flexible calves, and we work all 3 of those planes. Couple this with the video I did on barefoot calf raises and having strong toes and a strong arch, and it's going to go a long way for being a strong runner and having a good base. Hopefully this was helpful.